very good morning to all our viewers. 2020, what a year. Obviously, it will be remembered for the impact the virus had on the world. But what had an even larger impact on the world is the uncertainty the virus created. Whether it's the uncertainty about availability of toilet paper or uncertainty about when next you can go and visit your family. This uncertainty is the golden thread that runs through all aspects of life currently. At the moment, countries don't know how they are going to solve their debt burden. Companies don't know where their customers went. And breadwinners don't know if they're going to have a job at the end of the year. Whichever way you look at it, the uncertainty the virus has created is dominating all decision-making at present. Our macadamia industry also did not escape this impact of this uncertainty either. Having said that, we came off very, very lightly. Before digging into the macadamia markets in too much detail, I want to give you more of a holistic view of what transpired in the nut industry to help you put everything in more perspective. The almond crop in California, for instance, was the largest ever, and prices dropped by 35% from January. That is considerable if one considers that the almond prices were already lower than most other nut prices at that point. Cashew and walnut prices also dropped by as much as 20% this year. The pecan market is currently going through a turbulent time, with demand for the product all but disappearing in China. This in itself is terrible news if one considers that 85% of the South African crop is exported to China. It does look like the demand is slowly returning though. Considering what I've just said, we in the macadamia industry are in a very privileged position. Prices did remain relatively stable, and it looks like the bulk of our crop will be sold out by the end of the season. The fact that South Africa and Australia will have a much smaller crop than what initially was anticipated will also play in our hand. But let's break it down in further detail and look at the two main market segments in our industry, which is nut and shell and kernel. On the nut and shell side, South Africa is by far the most dominating player in the market. By the time we all came to the realization that the virus will have a major impact on the world economies, South Africa had started harvesting and many contracts were in place already. What further transpired was that during the initial lockdown period, all the handlers actively started processing the nut and shell for the export market. There are no actual export figures available yet, but if we use the PPCB inspection reports as a barometer, as illustrated on the graph, you will notice a significant increase in volumes inspected between April and June compared to prior years over the same period. Initial prices for good quality product was well over $6 per kg, but as the season progressed, that price came down to around $5.70. The good thing was that throughout the harvest, there was consistent demand for good quality product, and I think that is very important. Where we saw the demand disappearing slightly was on the lesser quality product and the smaller size nut and shell. That did, however, change when the market came to the realization that the South African crop was going to be substantially smaller. As we speak, there's hardly any nut and shell being offered. And in fact, a lot of handlers are running around to try and find enough nuts to fulfill their contracts. What we also saw this year was that some of the Chinese buyers asked that their shipments be delayed to September, October. This was because of the huge volumes exported at the beginning of the season. But the good news is that as far as I'm aware, there has not been any defaults on contracts. There were, however, an increasing number of quality complaints, but that is to be expected in a downturning market. We don't have the final numbers yet, but it does look like South Africa is going to export at least as much nut and shell in 2020 as the 28,000 tons we did in 2019. If we look at the kernel market, the effect of the COVID-19 was much more pronounced. Fortunately, many of our contracts for the season were concluded at the end of the prior season or at the beginning of the new year. Some customers have asked for delayed shipments, but all contracts are being honored. This year, we anticipate to only crack around 20,000 tons of nut and shell, which is significantly less than the 30,000 tons from the year before. What is also interesting is to observe on the graph is that the percentage-wise, we will only crack around 40% of our total crop, and compared to the numbers in excess of 50% of the prior years. There was clearly a bigger focus on nut and shell exports this year, and we contributed to the uncertainty the kernel market had. During the initial phases of the lockdown in Europe and North America, we saw the demand for the snacking styles remaining strong, but the orders for the ingredient styles disappeared almost completely. As the economy slowly started opening up, the demand for the ingredient styles did increase though. This year, Kenya had, unfortunately, the largest negative impact on our market. What happened was that the Kenyan processors ran into cash flow problems and started dumping product by lowering their prices, which created even more uncertainty around the price levels for our customers. This forced them to only buy hand to mouth, and not too many buyers were keen on signing longer-term contracts. The impact of Kenya's price dropping forced our South African prices down as well. We saw the prices on Style 1 that went down from over $20.50 at the beginning of the season to around $19 per kg, with similar price movements on other styles. Now, with Kenya's total kernel crop being around 5,000 tons, they have sold around 3,000 tons already. The balance of the stock could be absorbed quite quickly in the European and North American markets. We must just hope that the Kenyans do not drop the prices further. The South African kernel volumes will be around 7,000 tons compared to the 10,000 tons of 2019. In South Africa, most of the snacking styles have been sold, but I see that there's still quite a bit of ingredient styles that is on offer. That should be taken care of before the end of the year though. In summary, we in the macadamia industry can feel very good about the season. We generally had very good prices. The exchange rate played in our favor, and it looks like the South African crop will be sold before the start of the new season. Considering all the negative things that happened in the world, combined with all the uncertainty, we can really consider ourselves very fortunate to be in this beautiful industry. I thank you.